I'm Aryeh Schwartz along with Rachel Galligan, and welcome to the Winsidr Show, where it's all about the W. This episode, we welcome to the show a longtime Hungarian national team member, a UConn star drafted 16th overall to the Minnesota Lynx, and has made her impression on the league felt immediately. Today, our guest is Dorka Juhasz. If you like our show, please consider joining our Patreon community, patreon.com/Winsidr. That's patreon.com/Winsidr. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W. And don't forget to see our amazing staff's written content over at winsidr.com. That's winsidr.com. If you're looking for a fun way to enjoy the W, join our team over on Playback for our W watch parties. Use the link playback.tv/Winsidr. That's playback.tv/Winsidr, and you never know when we're going to do a merch giveaway. Welcome back to the Winsidr Show. We're very excited to dive right in with our next guest.
Dorka Juhasz, a rookie that is making waves in the W. Dorka, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you. I'm just living the life, living out my dreams, being able to obviously play in the league, and as a rookie, getting the opportunity to, compete against the best of best. I mean, it's been an amazing learning process for me, and just getting the opportunity obviously is just kind of the cherry on top. And I've been having fun. Obviously, we just won our first home game the other night, so that was a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to win more games.
I was going to ask you, how's your first weeks in the W, but I feel like the more pressing question is how's being a starter in the WNBA? Has that sunk in? Is it just kind of how do you feel when you hear you're a starter in the WNBA?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I ever kind of took a moment to kind of reflect and realize, and I was like, okay, first time I heard, coach say that, hey, actually Dorka is in the starting lineup. I was like, okay, let's do it. It's a challenge, but I don't think I necessarily put much thought in it, especially these past games. It's just kind of naturally, I was like, okay, I want to win. So I don't care if I come off the bench or, being a starter, but I want to have an impact, and, as a rookie, obviously, setting goals for yourself, you can't go too big with setting huge unreachable goals. But for me, it's always been just obviously being grateful for the opportunity and taking advantage of it, especially just bringing something defensively and offensively if I can. But I think when I have some off time, it's definitely good to think about it. I was how far I've come, and just being able to obviously play with the best of best and against the best of best in this league. It's just been it's just been a blessing, and I've been having so much fun.
Not many people have been screaming about you as much as Rachel has over the past month, 2 months, 3 months. She has been blowing my phone up, telling me to follow you in college. I'm not as well versed in the college game as I should be, and Rachel is working every day to change that. So I know she's really excited for this episode. I too am, but you guys kind of have some history. You go way back. She's been watching you since forever. But before we get into all that, I'm so curious for you, what was draft night like? Did you maybe speak to some UConn alumni about what the experience is going to be like? What was your expectations? How was that night?
Oh, I mean, it was awesome. It was definitely a night that I will never, ever forget. Just kind of always think back when, I decided to come to the U.S. and just playing college away from my family. And then, as I started working, I was getting a little bit hungry for, I want to be in the draft. I want to get drafted, especially as a kid from a small country like Hungary. That meant so much for me to be there, because I felt like that moment, obviously, personally, is a huge accomplishment and milestone in my life. And, you know, it reflects on all the work and that I put in, you know, overcoming injuries and a lot of other things, but also just, I don't know, just kind of representing my country. So it was super special. You know, I remember, like, obviously going into it, just being super nervous. We were actually at a team dinner with UConn, kind of like our closing team dinner. And, you know, I just got a text and I was like, oh, you're invited. And I was like, oh my God, like, you know, just trying to kind of hide my feelings a little bit. Like, I didn't want to make like a huge announcement or anything, but I remember obviously my teammate Lou Lopez Seneschal, like, she got the text too. So we were like just super excited. I was like, as both like people from different countries, like 5th-year students at UConn, like it was just such a blessing. And just remembering, obviously telling the team, like all the UConn alums, obviously saying that congrats and how amazing that is. But I didn't know what to expect, but it turned out to be one of the best nights of my life, a huge milestone, I feel like, in my career. And, you know, that was kind of the moment when I was like, okay, all the hard work, all the injuries, the surgeries that I went through, like it was all worth it, because I am here and this was a dream come true. So it was awesome. I'll never forget it.
You know, obviously, let's go back to the start. There's so much to talk about. There's so much to unpack. I'm definitely in a unique perspective. For those of you who don't know, I work with a lot of international players and I help them get recruited to come play in the States and play collegiately. So I've had an opportunity to watch you, Dorka. I mean, you remember I think it was like 2015 when you were playing in under 16, and you know, getting a chance to watch you from that moment to where you are now, and even coming on my show. Our show is so cool. It's a really cool full circle moment. I've really enjoyed watching your career. As Aryeh said, I have been screaming to anybody who will listen that you were going to be the steal of the draft. But I want to say, and by the way, I even took a trip to your hometown, Paige. I knew I couldn't recruit you. I was recruiting one of your teammates, but it's cool. And so I want to be able to bring some of that into this interview and allow you to share your story for everybody who doesn't quite know this side of it. So I want you to take us back to the start. There's a lot to talk about. I would ask you how you fell in love with the game, but I think it's pretty obvious, at least to those who do know. Your mother was a big time pro for like 25 years. So growing up, you must have had a basketball in your hands literally since birth. So why don't you take us back to the very beginning and how you fell in love with the game and what that was like growing up with your mother?
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right about that. You know, I felt like I was kind of born to be a basketball player. I remember just, you know, kind of like being a little kid, always having a ball in my hand. But, you know, what was special about it, that like I felt like obviously my dad played basketball too, which is kind of a cute story because that's how they got together as my parents. My mom was playing professionally and my dad was playing on like kind of like a Hungarian like college team, and they were playing, you know, always like these practice games against each other, and they were guarding each other. So it was like a very cool story. Obviously my dad became a doctor, chose to become a doctor, and you know, my mom kept playing, but you know, I felt like I was always kind of surrounded by basketball lovers. And just growing up, I remember like obviously I wasn't able to see my mom play in person, but I was always asking my parents like, hey, can you like get that DVD and like can we watch my mom's game? So I would rewatch my mom's games, like her championship games, games that she lost, just to like see her on TV.
Wow.
And kind of relive those moments. But also I think she did a great job of like not pressuring me in any type of way. Like she wasn't like, okay, well, I was a basketball player, you have to be one. She was letting me try out sports. I was competitively swimming. I was pretty good at it, but I just felt like I was kind of like looking forward to be in a team, and I knew it's gonna be basketball. I tried volleyball too, that was fun too, but I just felt like basketball is my sport. And it wasn't even necessary that I was already like taller than people, and you know, people were telling me to play basketball. I was still kind of a late bloomer, so I wasn't very tall for a long time. But I started playing basketball, and I remember just like completely falling in love with it. I wanted to be like my mom. I wanted to be like her in every single way. I wanted to be a champion. I wanted to play for my national team because she did for over 100 times. She wore the national team jersey. So like I was super motivated internally to be like her, and also just because I was so passionate about basketball. I always loved the ball. I always spent so much time as a kid in the gym, just asked my parents to come rebound for me. So that's kind of how it started. But definitely, having my mom as a role model was a huge influence for me, even though she obviously didn't want me to be like pressure. But I felt like it was coming from me, like something internally. I don't know. I just felt like I was just so like logged into that thought of like, I want to be like her when I grow up. And she's still my role model to this day. So I'm just very grateful to, have such a role model in my life.
That is the most heartwarming story I think I've ever heard. I love like here. Yeah, that's just sorry. You've completely distracted us. Maybe this is a moot point, but do you wear her number?
Yes. So it's actually a funny story because when I was playing, growing up, I always wore number 4, and number 4 was her jersey number in her professional teams and all of that. And then when I got to the national team, I was starting wearing number 14 because she was wearing number 14 in national team. And I don't know, I just kind of stayed with number 14. I was also like, in Europe, you have to be like kind of like the first person runs in first in introduction. So that was number 4. So I was like, I'm 6'5". Like, I don't want to wear number 4 and like just kind of be the tallest person in the first of the line. So I don't know. I just kind of fell in love with 14, but she wore both of those jersey numbers actually. So it's obviously, it means a lot to me to wear number 14, and, just being drafted, and like, obviously the Lynx did not have a number 14. I was like, yeah, like this is just meant to be. And I was just so happy to obviously keep kind of bringing her memory, like, of her as a player, and kind of just always making her proud, hopefully, but yeah.
Hey, look, the Lynx have a history of retiring jerseys that go in order. And Lindsay Whalen's 13, so it's just a matter of time until you make that number 14. The next one in the rafters. I think I heard that your mother played an exhibition game against UConn, the school you end up going to. Is that true?
Yes, it is. Isn't it kind of insane? But yeah.
That's
so
wild.
I already thought about, like, whenever I was at Ohio State, just kind of, thought about like how it used to be a thing for like international professional teams to come to the U.S., like go around the country and play like kind of like the exhibition games against college teams. And I was at UConn, and I was like, and like they were telling me, like, I actually had, like my assistant coach, like, like Jamal, like she was actually on the team playing against my mom back in, I think, 93, maybe 1993. So it was like, what a small world. Like, how is this even possible? But I could go back to being at Ohio State first time I met, Coach Katie Smith, and she played against my mom. And I was like, everybody played against my mom? Like, what a small world. So it's like everything is so connected. It's just like, I feel like it's like it was a full circle moment. And obviously, just being coached by her now, but it's awesome. I mean, yeah, like who would have thought, a small Hungarian team coming here playing against the team that I was playing in at UConn, like, it's just awesome. It's great.
The world is so much smaller when you really stop and think about it, especially when you're talking about the world of basketball. Which brings me to a really good point. This is a really good segue. You were really highly recruited because of your time with the national team, ended up going to Ohio State for a few years, then eventually transferred to UConn. I want to ask, that decision to come play in the USA and go to college versus stay in Hungary and go pro at an earlier age. I would say, I see both. I see players who do both over in Europe, and Hungary in particular is a country that to me feels like, yeah, you do have some Hungarian players that come over, but there's a lot that go pro right away, right out of basically high school. I wanted to ask just about that decision process for you. What were the benefits that you saw from coming over here and getting a scholarship and playing in the collegiate system? Was that always the plan for you?
Actually, it wasn't. Yeah, you kind of mentioned, like, I felt like, especially, during my time when I've decided, like, it wasn't very popular as international students to come here. I had a lot of people around me telling me, like, hey, like, if you go to the United States, like, people are going to forget about you. You're never going to be anyone. I just felt like there was always this kind of nervousness and, like, kind of like the uncertainty of, like, players, like young, talented players going to the States. Like, since there's so many, teams that you can choose from, like, you want to make sure that, you're ending up at a team that is the right for you. And I think there was a lot of people around me telling me, like, hey, don't do it. You never know. Some people, like, come here and then they just, like, stop playing basketball, just settle down here. So there was, like, a lot of negativity, I felt like, around that time, towards, like, kind of coming to the U.S. and going to college. And, I was a little nervous, but I felt like that year before I made my decision, I was obviously playing in the professional team. I was starting already. I was 17. I was starting on the team. I played in Euro Cup. And that summer I did U19 World Championship, and I did also U18 European Championship. So I felt like the whole year around, I had basically no break. I was just going. I was just making a lot of minutes. And unfortunately, at the European Championship, I tore my ACL in the first 20 seconds of, I think it was the quarterfinal. And that was my first ever serious injury. I didn't even roll my ankle, nothing. So that was the time for me when I was like, wow, like, I was just scared of the process of, like, the ACL surgery, the recovery time. It's a year long. Like, it was just a lot of things going through my head. And I felt like I always wanted to get my education. So that was, especially having a father who was a doctor, he was always just recommending, just as a female athlete, obviously my future wasn't going to be promised to be making millions of euros or dollars or whatever currency we're talking about, but just to have a plan B, I guess. So whenever I saw my ACL, that's when I kind of started looking into more of, like, okay, maybe I could try to go to the United States because I do want to get my education. I want to get degrees. I want to also continue to play basketball and maybe learn a different type of basketball. So that was the first time that I kind of started engaging with, coaches. I saw always, they messaged me, they emailed me, and I was like, America, I don't know. I'm kind of nervous about it. And, I lived with my parents the whole 17, 18 years. So I was like, moving to another continent is just scary. So when I tore my ACL, that was the first time I was like, okay, I think I want to do it. I think I want to just have another option, because at that time it was also kind of thought of like, hey, if you're playing professionally, you don't really have time to do school. Some teams you have practices 2-3 times a day. Like, you don't have time, like in the morning and the afternoon, you don't have time to go to college, get your education. So I was like, okay, let's do it. So I started engaging with coaches. And the fun fact about Ohio State was that I already talked to them a little bit before, but they were the first ones to call me after my ACL injury that they saw. They called me and was like, hey, like, we still want you. Like, your scholarship is still on the table, and we're not going to pull it because you got hurt, and we want you to come here. So for me, that was the moment I was like, okay, I want to go there. I had that trust. And kind of after that, I came to visit, but I kind of knew that I'm going to go to Ohio State. I fell in love, obviously, with the visit and everything, and just put myself out there and coming out of my comfort zone, and look at me now. So it was a lot of decision-making processes that were hard, but it worked out well, and I'm really, really happy I made that decision, even though it was scary at that time.
So You mentioned it just now about maybe I can learn a different style of play. Maybe I can add certain things. We talk about American basketball versus European style of play. That's a very trendy thing to talk about. I do want to ask, I mean, you came over, played for Kevin McGuff, played for Gino Auriemma. You know, your career had a phenomenal collegiate career, but from your perspective, how did you personally see yourself evolve after coming to America and playing in this system?
Mm-hmm. You know, I think it was definitely kind of challenging, especially, you know, missing a whole year of basketball the previous year before I came to college. And, you know, coming into Ohio State where I was kind of thrown into deep water. You know, that was after the year, you know, Kelsey Mitchell's group graduated. So there was a lot of opportunity to play, which I think, honestly, that was the best decision for me because, you know, after missing a year of basketball, like you want to be able to play right away. You want to be able to, you know, kind of work through mistakes and kind of do all of that. So, you know, going to Ohio State, that was, I think, awesome for me to be able to kind of fight for a starting spot, you know, start the whole time and be able to, as a freshman, work through stuff and kind of just figure out things. So it was definitely great, but I felt like a little bit challenging just because, you know, obviously coming back from an ACL is not easy, you know, with all the contacts and being a post player, just always kind of pushing around, you know, jumping a lot, rebounding. And it was definitely scary, but I felt like those 3 years was great for me to kind of evolve every single year, learning a little bit more about, you know, the American style basketball, you know, the pace in college, the physicality, you know, going against super athletic players, you know. There was just a lot of learning in that, but also a lot of being able to make some mistakes and work through it. That was awesome, I think. And I just felt like those 3 years were great for me to kind of personally, you know, just get better in basketball, kind of get back to where I was, but also learn new stuff and you know, kind of get a name for myself, to be honest, just put myself, like, you know, just being able to obviously kind of put myself on the map in, you know, at the college level in general, so people know about me, and maybe get recognized a little bit more, you know, because I felt like, you know, as an international student, like, you know, we didn't have overtime, we didn't have all of these, you know, social media platforms to kind of get a name for ourselves already in high school. So I came in here, like, you know, most of the people had no idea who I was. So I think those 3 years were great for me to kind of maybe get a little bit of name of myself. And, you know, I think it was a lot of growth, a lot of things, but, you know, I graduated early and I felt like I just kind of, I'm ready to take the next step. And, you know, UConn was there for me, you know, and that was just a huge thing for me, you know, being able to go to UConn and play for, obviously, Coach Aryeh. That was just such a blessing, and that was a whole new world and a whole new different system in basketball, and it was fun. I think it was a fun experience. This past 5 years were just a lot of figuring out a lot of stuff and learning about myself, learning about, you know, the culture, not just basketball, but even off the court, you know, growing, being independent. So it was fun, and I'm happy to, you know, obviously had to play for 2 different coaches, 2 different systems, because that just gives a little bit more experience when it comes to, you know, playing professionally and go play in different teams. So it was all, you know, all worked out.
Absolutely. And what amazes me about you, and again, we make jokes about me sitting here and like being a fan and screaming about you and stuff like that. But part of that is genuinely because I have had a really unique perspective of that. And what's always amazed me about your career is the steadiness that you've played with. You've stayed very consistent, you know, with your ability to rebound and score, but also with just your overall, I think, basketball IQ and the way you view the game. I think it's extremely, and I say that with the point of a lot of people don't realize that really since you were like 13 or 14 years old, you have played at the highest level of basketball on the biggest stages against pros like your entire life. So it only makes sense, especially after making the transition to come over here and play in college. And now you being able to make this jump to the WNBA, being able to be who you are with your overall experience playing against just high level competition your whole life. Can you talk about that and how that exposure and just experience playing against the highest levels from such a young age formed you?
Yes, of course. I mean, yeah, as you said, I felt like, in Europe, it's kind of different than here. Whenever you're ready to play in the pro league and your team or like your hometown has a professional team, if you're good enough, you're going to be able to practice with them and play with them. So I think it was great for me to be able to be in a hometown, where there was not only a really good Hungarian team that was competing obviously highly in the Hungarian league, but also in the Euro Cup. So it's actually funny because now that especially before the draft, I was kind of like asked a lot of questions about this, and I had some pictures and I was looking kind of digging into like teams and pictures of who I played against. That I played against Chelsea Gray. I played against Em Wolders and just a lot of WNBA players that at that time I had no idea about. I was so overly focused about, like EuroLeague, like European players that and not necessarily was able to watch enough WNBA games. But I was like, now that I'm reflecting, I was like, there's a picture of me guarding Chelsea Gray when I was 16 or 17. And I think that is just so crazy, like looking back,
So
like
cool.
I was really tested already, and at that age, and I think that just definitely gave me a lot of experience, especially coming to college and just being in different teams. And I felt like I was sometimes a little bit ahead of the game, especially just in playing wise than some of my teammates sometimes. And I think it's just awesome that like European players have that like extra experience that they can bring, because we came here to the United States, and it's a whole new basketball system, but we also know a different style of basketball. And I think when you mix it together, I think that's the best part of basketball, but just having that experience was great for me personally. I learned a lot. I played against amazing players already in Europe, but also I had really great mature teammates that were kind of just like mother figures to me at that point. And I've learned a lot, and I think that just helped me to be able to come to a different country and maybe bring that a little bit with me, that maturity of, and I guess as you said, steadiness in college. And it was overall like an amazing experience. And I think maybe it's just a different thing for European players. And but yeah, it was all great, and I'm just very grateful I had that opportunity, and I was not scared to bring that with me to the States.
Well, we're definitely going to need to see that photo. But me personally, I'm from Minnesota, so I always keep an extra close eye on the Minnesota Lynx, even though I don't live there anymore. And I've been blown away by your game and your ability to elevate the players around you, and not just, okay, I know I have to feed the hot hand, but just making the smart plays. Your basketball intelligence is years beyond your age, but everybody has to grow. And I'm so curious, what is the coaching staff hammering home for you of a point of growth?
Yeah, I would just say kind of like, obviously as a rookie, sometimes I can be a little bit hesitant of like, I know what's the right thing, but I'm like, should I do this? Should I not? So I think, obviously talking to the coaches a lot, just kind of, not overthinking stuff, just kind of like go with it, have the instinct to do it. But kind of just go with it. Like, hey, you're open, you shoot it. And, I think they put a lot of trust in me with like, obviously decision making. And I'm just looking back at the, Lynx, like having Jessica Shepard with me, who is also a very versatile post that can post, like seeing that, like obviously Coach Reeve is trusting the post players to have the ball in their hands and, making, as you said, decisions, passes, just kind of reading the game. I feel like, they're kind of just telling me more to do that. Just don't kind of overthink where I am and just trying to get out of the play just to give them space, but more like use those abilities. Like if you think that's a if you think that's a great way to go there, set a screen or just pitch it or pass or something, like do it. Like just kind of play with the instinct, stop overthinking as much. And, obviously as a rookie being in the league, sometimes, I'm a little bit hesitant of like, okay, like I don't want to make a mistake right here, but kind of they're just always, I guess, supporting me and telling me to like, it's okay, like play freely, like we know what you can do, and just don't be so hesitant about it. So that's definitely something that I always, just get from the coaches, kind of like be comfortable with it. And I think, I definitely can see much growth, especially the past games and just playing more freely, I guess. But other than that, just kind of still trying to figure out spots on the floor, obviously in the W where I can be offensively much better. Obviously as a post player, it's definitely more physical in there. I can tell you that, I'm going against great, strong post players that are, so dominant in there. So, I have to find kind of the spots where I want to be, where I can be, where I like to shoot the ball from. So that's still something I feel like I need to grow, and then we're still trying to figure out, obviously, as a team and the coaches. But I would say the biggest thing is just don't think that much. I guess it's easy to say, but as I feel like as a first year rookie, you sometimes get yourself into like kind of overthinking a little bit of what you should do. And I feel like whenever I play with just my instincts and I'm just playing, that's when I play the best. So I think that's definitely like the biggest, I guess, tip or help that they're giving me, advice that they're giving me.
I love that. And we only have a few more questions for you, but I'm curious for you, like how you view the game differently coming off the bench or as a starter.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely different. I was obviously in both scenarios, I guess, both positions in college. I was at Ohio State. I started basically all 3 of my years from a freshman, so I was always, starting. So I got very comfortable with that. And then obviously when I transferred to UConn, I knew nothing is going to be guaranteed. I knew I'm likely to not be a starter, especially, with being just, seniors in front of me. I knew like I have to learn this role. I have to be able to come off the bench and, bring some spark. And I think that was probably the best thing that happened to me because, it was tough. It was challenging. It was definitely something new that I had to embrace, but I honestly enjoyed it. I never cared whether I'm a starter or not, but that was good for me to be able to obviously, being at UConn where there's so many great players around me, but how can I bring something different? How can I have that mindset of like, okay, I want to have an impact, a different impact than anybody else, or just kind of, I don't know, have the extra gear and turn it up whenever I come in when the starters come off. So I think that was great for me and definitely helped, coming into the W, just, like obviously I was expecting right away to like come off the bench and just be able to just have an impact. And obviously my first focus is always defense, but then, if I have the opportunity, just take advantage of the offensive end as well. So, being a starter right now, I mean, obviously that is something I don't take for granted. It's definitely something that is awesome, and I'm glad that they trust me enough for me to start a game. That means a lot, but honestly, it doesn't really matter to me. I just want to make sure whenever I'm on the court, and these are the goals for me every single game, just being able to impact the game defensively and offensively as well. And, when I'm talking about offense, not necessarily always scoring, because I know, we have so many other scorers, but how can I set my shooter up? How can I set a screen for her to get open? How can I get an offensive rebound? How can, give a pass for a backdoor layup? Just things like that, those little things, I feel like the little details is what I take a lot of pride in, the extra little things that maybe, little hustle plays that I can do for this team. So that's definitely always the high up on the list. And if there's, scoring involved and open shots that, I know I'm comfortable taking, I'm going to be taking. But, no matter whether I'm coming off the bench or I'm a starter, those are always, especially as a rookie, like those are always high on my list. And I just want to make a difference, and that's always what I work for.
What a great attitude to have. That's awesome. Let's talk about the future. I mean, you've spent the last 5 years here in the United States. Obviously, you're still in the United States. Now that you're pro, I mean, are you excited for the opportunity to potentially go back to Europe during the WNBA offseason? I mean, like, what are your future plans looking like here?
Yes, I actually just signed with Skio in Italy, so I'm super excited to go back for offseason. I always imagine myself obviously playing in Europe as well and at the top, which is EuroLeague. So being able to go to a team like Skio, who was obviously a bronze medalist in EuroLeague last season, and now as a rookie year in Europe back again, I guess that's awesome. And I'm super excited about it because, as a European, I feel like you miss the European basketball as well. And I haven't been in it for so long, except for, obviously national team camps, but it's going to be also a new thing for me. And I'm just so blessed to have an opportunity to obviously go to Skio, which is a very, very good team, great coaches, great teammates, and play at the highest level there too. So, as a basketball player, it's always for me, and as a competitor, I love winning. I really love winning, but also I want to be challenged. And I think, obviously coming to the WNBA is also very challenging, but playing in Europe at the best league is also going to be a challenge for me. So this has all worked out great, and I'm just super excited about the future.
Very excited, and we always like to end our episodes with a little rapid fire, but take all the time you need. There's no pressure to answer within 2 seconds or anything like that. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Would you rather get a steal or a block?
A block.
Who is the toughest player you have ever had to go up against in your entire career?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I don't know. I feel like I'm being challenged every single game. Obviously, when you have to guard Ellen Daldon and then you have Neka Ogwumike, like it's not getting easier. Also Brittany Griner, it's just so many different players. I don't know if I can say one. I feel like it's obviously the post player. It's different type of players, but yeah, I don't know. I can't answer that.
Okay, you named a few, and that's worthy. I'm over here laughing. I'm like, man, it's been
okay, perfect.
It's been a welcome.
It's different challenges every single night, but that's the fun, and especially like players that you look up to as a post player when you're at home watching TV as a kid, and then you're actually playing against them. It's fun. It's fun.
All right, fine. How about this one? Who is your favorite team? I mean, let's go EuroLeague. Who is your favorite EuroLeague team growing up?
I would say probably Fenerbahce.
Okay.
They got some dope jerseys.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, they're a team I'm a fan of over there too. Who is your women's basketball GOAT?
My winning? What is it?
Your women's basketball GOAT. Normally we say WNBA GOAT, but because you have an extensive history overseas, wanted to open it up to EuroLeague or Euro Cup or anything like that also.
Ooh, definitely I would say my mom, number one, because she's always gonna be my number one role model. But Diana Taurasi. I can also name a few, but Maya Moore. Just growing up, I don't know. I can go for a lot of people, but I think Diana Taurasi was somebody that I just, even being in Europe when she played in Russia, just growing up, I was like, wow, like she's really, really good at basketball. And, it happened to be obviously a UConn alum, and just playing against her, like, I think she was obviously the number one, like after my mom, that I was like, wow, like she's really, really good in basketball. I want to be like her.
All right. That's a safe one. You pass. Final one we got for you with rapid fire. There's 10 seconds left on the clock. You're down 2. Do you go for the win with a 3 or do you tie?
Ooh, I would say I would probably like ask for it in the post, but I don't know why, but I just feel like I would also just shoot the three. But I would probably ask for somewhere in the post and just go to work and get fouled or get M1 or
Yeah,
Let's go.
or just keep doing it in overtime and just keep going to work. I like that answer.
yeah, and like foul them out and then keep going.
There you go. There you go. Okay. Last question. It's not rapid fire. I always like to ask these questions, especially with someone like you with such a interesting background. What advice would you give to any little young girl over there in Europe who has dreams and aspirations of playing college basketball or just playing at the highest professional levels?
I would just say to don't be afraid to, I guess, dream big. You know, being in that situation, or like, I guess, you know, growing up, I always had this wild dream of being in the WNBA and play for honestly any team in the WNBA. I always had that like back of my mind, but I wasn't quite sure how I can reach it. It was definitely an uncertain thing, but I never let go of that dream. I always had that. I always felt like I can do it. I wasn't sure how I'm going to do it, but I felt like, you know, like dreaming big was something for me that just kept me in it. You know, I obviously had many injuries. I had ACL. I broke my wrist. I had so many injuries that were just super tough, like mentally and physically. But I felt like I always had that dream, or those dreams, big dreams that I had for myself back in my mind. So, you know, especially, you know, a person or like a kid in Europe that is just like, hey, I want to play in the WNBA. You know, it might look different than my journey. My journey was to come to the United States, obviously the college, and kind of work my way up there and find my way into the W, you know, no matter what, if you get drafted or not getting drafted. But that was my journey. I just want people to know that that's not the only way, especially in Europe. Like, that's not the only way to be recognized. Just keep working hard. Your journey might look different than mine, but hopefully, obviously, my example and kind of my journey and route is an example that it can happen. I mean, it does take a lot of work. You know, a lot of long nights and coming into the gym, shooting. You know, a lot of injuries that you have to overcome mentally and physically, but you know, just don't be afraid to dream hard and dream big and dream hard, because, you know, there's always an opportunity. And when that opportunity comes, you got to stay ready, because when it comes, like, you got to take advantage of it. But just keep working hard and keep dreaming, and, you know, always ask people around you, like, what are the, I guess, opportunities, or if you want to come to the States, like, there's always people that you can contact, or even contact me, just DM me, and I can tell those kids my story and how it can happen. But just keep dreaming hard and keep working.
Dorka, you are a phenomenal person. It has been a pleasure to watch you for so many years. I feel very lucky, and I look forward to watching you for many, many, many more. Thank you for coming on and sharing your story. We wanted to get that out from a different angle, and we appreciate your time coming on. Best of luck the rest of the season. We look forward to following along, and hopefully we can have you back on at some point.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.